experts in the field, both from the topic of consulting and talent. So we've got Ahmed here, who he'll be doing a bit more of an intro in a second. But also for those of you who haven't been living on LinkedIn and haven't seen the enormous announcement that is Ranaia, I hope I've said that right. We have Maarten and Erik here sharing their experience from industry and their take on AI skills in particular. Before we jump in, I'm going to just start by sharing my screen. And I'm going to jump in with a few housekeeping rules before we go into the intros. So the first thing I want to let you know is that if you're new to Future Leaders, it's a unique event. We are running this as both a Zoom and a LinkedIn Live event. So what that means is if you're joining us on Zoom, that's great. Welcome to the Zoom room. You are able to interact with us here in the chat. But if you are with us on LinkedIn Live, this is a live stream. If you are having any technical issues on LinkedIn Live, this is not monitored. So please have a look around the event page. We have dropped the link to the Zoom room also on the LinkedIn Live. If you have any issues, come and join us here in the Zoom room. This is a 90-minute event. So we are going to go for 90 minutes. The session is going to be broken out into two halves. The first half is going to be me talking with our panelists around broader topics. The second half is going to be a chance for you to ask your questions directly to the panel. We are going to be recording this and it will be available on Elemed's website. I will share a QR code at the end of the session where you can access the recording. However, remember, the real value in today's session is in being able to upvote your questions and make sure the questions that you have are being answered by our panel of talent experts, myself included, and AI skills experts who are going to be here. This is going to be, I'm Greek, guys. And for those of you that know me or just generally Greek people, timekeeping is not something we're great at. But I promise you, and I've been really good at these last few sessions, we are going to run this on time. We won't overrun. Please also keep an eye on your inbox for the follow-up emails because we live and breathe off of your feedback. So tell us what we can do better for next time, what you really liked about the session, and also what ideas you have for future sessions that we should be talking about so that we can make sure we're providing value to you all. If you can also take a second to get your phone or have a look in the chat to scan this link. This is going to take you to Slido, which is going to be where we are going to be dealing with the live questions. You can see that there are already some questions in there. So some of you, when you pre-registered for this event, you had questions that you already wanted to put to our panel. Those questions are already in there. So if you have a burning question, you can go ahead and add it right now, or you can have a scan of whatever questions are already in there and upvote, give a thumbs up to the ones that you really like so that we can make sure we're addressing the questions that you're most interested in the live Q&A session afterwards. So let's now take a second. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to take a second to bring everybody up on the screen and to welcome my super esteemed panel. Maybe we can start with some brief intros. Let's start first with Erik.
Introduce myself. You would like me to introduce myself. That's right?
The man that needs no intro, but let's do it for politeness sake.
I'm Erik, the guy behind Regulatory Lasagna. I work for everybody and their mother in the MedTech space. Co-founded Ranaia together with Maarten, Dina, and Basil. And yeah, also deeply involved in development of European law, of course, as advisor to European institutions and member states.
Thanks so much, Erik. Let's bring
Ahmed. And sorry, yeah, of course, also partner in a law firm, meaning that I deal with talent all the time, right? I'm also in the people business this way, yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, of course. One of the other hats, the most important hat that you're currently wearing. Let's bring in Ahmed.
Yeah, thanks, Elena. So yeah, my name is Ahmed, director here at Elemed. I've been with the business now coming up to 4 years. So my role is predominantly supporting our clients within the healthcare technology space on project-based delivery, as well as interim support, and that's across Europe, US, and APAC, so effectively on a global scale. So yeah, based in London, and enjoy working with yourself, Elena.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thanks for joining as well. And finally, let's bring Maarten on the screen.
Yeah, thanks, Elena. Maarten Termors, as Erik said, currently the CEO of Ranaia.ai, the latest and probably greatest AI company in the regulatory space, if we say so ourselves. Before that, I was active in medical devices. Until September last year, I led one of Elekta's business divisions, for those of you who know that company, a radiotherapy company from Stockholm. Well, taking all that MedTech expertise also with me now to the AI space.
Thank you so much. So for those of you, I can see we've still got a few people joining in. So I'm just going to take a quick break for a second and share my screen again to share this QR code. Now, this QR code, if you're joining just now, is going to take you to Slido. In the second half of the session, we're going to be going into live Q&A where we're going to be addressing questions that have been registered on the Slido link. So take a second to scan this QR code, bring up Slido. If you have questions during the course of the conversation that we're having now, add them to the Slido. If you don't and you just want to have a little scroll, have a look through there. What questions jump out to you? What would you like us to answer? There are already, I think the last time I checked, there were over 15 questions there. We're not going to get through every single question. So let us know what ones are the most burning and the most important to you by giving a thumbs up in Slido so you can upvote them. When we come into the Q&A, we're going to address the questions from the most popular down. I also want to make sure that the Slido itself is actually working. So I'm going to go ahead and see if we can launch a poll. The poll should be asking the question, where are you joining from? So you should see that coming up on your Slido. And if it is, please let us know. So we've got people from the UK, we've got people from Munich, Italy, the US, Portugal, Canada, Amsterdam, Austria. That's a really big one on my screen, Austria. So I guess that must mean that we have a lot of people from Austria. So hello, Austria, Amsterdam, France, Basel, Portugal. We've really got a global audience. So thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world. You haven't missed out. We're about to get started. I want to start by just kind of setting the scene a little bit, because if you've looked at LinkedIn lately, you've seen the headlines. AI is something that is dramatically changing the workforce. And according to the latest data that LinkedIn produced in 2026, AI is creating, not replacing roles. But AI skills are really the newest currency. When they ran a report and looked at the jobs that were being posted in the US, and they noted a 70% increase in jobs requiring AI literacy skills. So this is really a hot topic, and one that we're definitely going to be spending time talking about today. We're also going to talk about the importance of the human side and the human skills that counterbalance AI. So first of all, I'm going to ask my panel a really open question, which is, if someone, well, actually, first I would like to know, what tech tool have you started using that has totally transformed the way you work? So I want something like really tangible that I can take away and try for myself. I'm going to start with Ahmed, because Ahmed, for those of you that don't know, Ahmed is basically the AI guy within Elemed. He's the one that's been experimenting with a lot of things. So Ahmed, let the world know, what is the tool that has changed the way that you work
No,
here?
thanks for that. And I wouldn't call myself necessarily an AI guru by any stretch of the imagination, but for sure, I think with the world of talent recruiting, I think the introduction of AI with regards to our workflow has obviously been, massively sort of changed the way we work. I think from LinkedIn to other platforms and sort of applicant tracking systems. But for me personally, I think we use Google Workspace here at Elemed, and one of Google's tools is Notebook LM, and I think I'll swear by this, but it's a fascinating tool if you guys haven't sort of come across it. I think the thing that I probably enjoy about it the most is it almost acts like a research assistant, and it's all source grounded, which effectively means that it only uses the information that you provide it. So if it's documents and any sort of information that you provide, it sort of spits back out, some infographics, it could be slides, or it can sort of break down sort of large pieces of data as well. But I think the creepiest thing about it, and I'm sure whoever's used it probably knows what I'm talking about, is that it has an audio overview, which is basically two robots who sort of create a podcast about that particular topic. So as someone who enjoys podcasts, it's always weird, but it's quite fascinating to see how it all breaks it down.
Yeah, you could literally create a podcast about a document that you wrote and have like two robots. Well, they sound like real people, but they're talking to each other, and that is creepy. Erik, what about you?
Well, actually, it's funny. I use this exact feature that Ahmed mentioned as well, because I spend quite a lot of time traveling, either in the car, in the plane, whatever. So if I need to read a lot of documents or ingest them, I would do specifically that. I would dump it in Notebook LM and have it make a podcast about it for me. So that's one. In the law firm, we are Legora adaptees. So this is our, let's say, all-encompassing AI system that for the legal work has really transformed my business. A lot of our legal know-how is in it. So also in the way that Ahmed described, that it's in the knowledge graph of the AI and helps us work better. Yeah, and then of course there's Ranaia for the regulatory stuff in the devices space. And in my personal life, I am a complete and utter cloud co-work adaptee. I really love that AI, and the co-work feature is just absolutely stunning, the way it interacts with your computer. And also, I think Claude has very nice personality as far as AIs go.
Very nice. Thank you, Erik. Maarten, what about you?
Yeah, I have a few tools that have replaced things completely that I used to use every day. So my ChatGPT has completely replaced Google. I hardly ever Google anymore. Wikipedia, I consume the information probably, but I never go to the site. It's all the front end now is the chatbot. And the other thing when I do for PowerPoints, you always want to have at least one image on a slide. I used to go to Google Images and copy paste something. Now it's all AI as well, usually Nano Banana by Google.
Yeah.
But the tool that has really transformed the way I work is the what it used to be called advanced voice mode in ChatGPT, where you can just talk to the AI. And as Erik is saying, if you're traveling, especially commuting, you're by yourself in the car, and just with the hands-free function of your phone, you can have a discussion, like a brainstorm, where you can say, you know, take this down for me. You come to the office and you have a bullet list of your thoughts, better structured probably than you would. And that is so powerful. You just have a sparring partner.
Yeah, I definitely find that the sparring partner element of some of these tools in particular, you know, with Chat or with Gemini, it allows you to kind of like brainstorm concepts, which is really, really good for ideation around whatever how you're going to approach a conversation through to a new business service offering, and the best ways to kind of structure that. So that's really, really powerful. I'm quite into like vibe coding at the moment. Like I've created like a few websites, you know, by myself, and a few GPTs that do like agent work for me.
Nice.
So I'm quite enjoying that, but it's a learning curve, and the hallucinations sometimes are crazy, but yeah, I'm embracing it myself. Okay, so then I can see that you're all kind of fans of AI, which is why you're here. But if someone on your team said AI is going to replace us, how would you respond to that? And I'm going to ask for concise answers, please. So let's go to Erik.
I would say it depends, and not only because I'm a lawyer, but also really it depends. I mean, if it would be the same as somebody working a loom would say, oh, a steam-powered loom is going to replace me. And I would say, no, if you are qualified enough to make me nice patterns so we can make more rugs, fantastic, it will not replace you. But on the other hand, if you're going to say like, well, I don't want to work with AI because I think everything I produce is always 100% accurate, 100% transparent, and always has all of the most recent information in it. That's why I don't need to use AI. I would say, no, sorry, this is not the attitude I'm looking for in somebody in my business.
What would you say, Maarten?
Well, I agree with Erik. First of all, I have this slide that I use that says the dishwasher did not replace the husband. So just because there's a task that can now be done in a more automated way it doesn't mean that the whole job goes away. But probably if the husband only skill was dishwashing, then probably the wife or husband would have replaced this particular husband, because then they're obsolete. So I think it'll replace tasks and not jobs, and we see this already in practice. And there is a risk that people who are not able to use AI will be maybe not replaced, but outcompeted by people who can.
Ahmed, do you want to bring the talent perspective?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think sort of immediately my response would probably be, I think I understand it, like the concerns I think surrounding AI, especially over the past five years or so, and this sort of hysteria in relation to AI and the sort of media outlets looking for clicks as well. I think it's quite sort of important to sort of accept that point. But just, I guess, sort of going off what Erik and Maarten said, I think it's sort of very, very credible points, and I sort of was thinking the same thing as well. But just from a talent perspective, I think, yeah, ultimately you could sort of say that people can search for particular candidates if you're sort of hiring for someone, but it's very difficult to sort of speak to a passive candidate and get them to want to go to a Series B startup company and sort of facilitate that move when in reality they're sort of in a comfortable position. And sort of likewise, when a hiring manager particularly says they want someone who has an entrepreneurial mindset, and I think in reality, I think what that really means is that they don't want to, handhold someone and sort of looking for someone who's more autonomous and independent. So there are sort of nuances to it, but yeah, I think first thing is take the temperature down a little bit, and yeah, understand their concerns, and of course the points that Maarten and Erik made, I think, is sort of very valid as well.
I think what I'm seeing, right, speaking to a lot of leaders out there, is that I don't want to say to everybody, your job is safe and AI is not going to replace you, right? Because I think that's the wrong message. I really do think that departments are going to be a lot smaller than what they have been in the past. And so the question is, how do you become one of the people that becomes invaluable to your team, that so much so that if a company is looking at reorganizing, or if they're growing and they're putting together a stretch project, how can you be the person that is the integral part of the team that, the company can't live without? What do you have to do to be that person? And so I do think that over the next few years, there is going to be a reorganization across this skill set. I don't think the jobs are going to be completely eliminated, but to Maarten's point, tasks will be. And so if you are in a role that is like very manual and very, very task based, my advice would be to start to build some other skills and competencies and look for opportunities that would give you a little bit more of those stretch projects, so that you can start to build that portfolio of experience that I talk about. So let's go then on into the next question. So let's talk about skills. So what's hot, what's not, and what's in constant demand? Ahmed, people always ask me this question from your side, because you deal mainly with consultants and companies that are, looking for people to deliver on projects or transformations and stuff like that. Like, what are you seeing from your side?
Yeah, no, it's a really, really important question, and yeah, something I've been thinking about sort of back end of last year as well. Already at the start of this year, it's been really, really interesting. A lot of our clients, I want to say over the past 3 weeks, I've had a number of requests with companies who are either already a standalone software or AI and machine learning. They are sort of looking to have a connected device that incorporates AI and artificial intelligence and machine learning. But one thing, just from a regulatory perspective, I think what was quite interesting, I've been receiving the last couple of weeks, is from an FDA perspective, I've had a lot of requests come through with regards to consultants or individuals who have PCCP experience in particular. For those perhaps who are not sort of familiar, I'm sure there's a lot of quality and regulatory people in this meeting at the moment. I'm sure they are sort of familiar with this, but it's more predetermined change control plans, which is effectively a regulatory framework designed to, allow medical device manufacturers, particularly those who have AI within their products, to be able to sort of have a plan for future modifications with regards to the algorithmic changes that do occur. And I think already people are sort of planning for that as well. So definitely something that's been over the past couple of weeks quite interesting to establish those requirements. And I think generally speaking, I think AI literacy is obviously a massively important element. I know you mentioned it earlier on the call, but someone who's can sort of work cross-functionally across teams, understand tech divisions, product teams, what that means from a regulatory perspective, and just a wider sort of project management. And that can be cybersecurity. I think that's also a very, very hot requirement within sort of quality and regulatory. So I would say those are the hot ones. I don't know if anyone else wanted to chime in, but I can go into the not or the constant demand shortly after.
Is there anything, I mean, I'm keen to move through the questions, Ahmed, but is there anything that has dropped off that, like, it was really hot and now you're not seeing as many requests for, or where it's oversaturated perhaps?
Yeah, not necessarily oversaturated, but it's definitely less of a demand in terms of just pure technical professionals that they're looking for. It's a lot less linear from the conversations that we're having. A lot of them, also a lot of the clients that we sort of service, they're sort of looking for people who can wear multiple hats. So if they've got a strong regulatory background, what's their understanding with regards to cybersecurity, artificial intelligence? If they've got a quality background, what have they done in terms of speeding up their processes? And yeah, I think it's less on just having one particular skill and more so what else can they do over this period of time to deliver this particular project, because yeah, there's a lot of things happening and things are moving very, very quickly. So that from a consultant perspective and consultants that we provide, it's definitely very valuable for them to be able to adapt and yeah, support in different areas of the business.
So let's jump into now, like, actually where you start, because I think this is a question that a lot of people have when they kind of so we've moved. I'm seeing a trend where we've moved from what is AI going to do, and actually let's just ignore it and maybe it's a phase and it's going to come and go. I mean, I was at the World Economic Forum last week and every single like shop front, I don't know if anyone's been, but it's almost like shops on the promenade get taken over by these companies, right? And so the shops themselves move out, the companies move in, they put their banner across the top, and then they host roundtables about specific topics. Every single company that was there, all the big ones, were talking about AI and AI as a solution and how they're embedding AI into their workflows or how they have a new AI. So it was really the theme of the conference. We've moved away from like it's a fad. I think people recognize that it's as transformational as the internet or social media, but maybe there's people here that they just literally don't know where to start. So Maarten, what would you say?
Yeah, well, first let me just quickly respond to it. It's not a fad, it's a technological development of the size of the internet and the smartphone. I think that is now clear, also looking at the amount of investment that's going in there. But it's going much faster than we're used to. That's why it felt like a fad at first, but it's not. So, but it also means that the answer, where do you learn AI, is probably not in school, where you learn French. It's fantastic. French language pretty stable. But if you learn something now, it's going to be outdated in 6 months. So I think when we talk about skills, I think curiosity, I'm not sure if that's a skill or a character trait, but that's really good to have. And I think where you learn AI is the same way you learn to play the piano, is practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
So you need to get your hands on it and find a use case that work. I mean, of course, you can generate images of cute cats or something, but if you don't have a purpose for them, yeah, you're not going to really be very proficient at that. But find a use case in your job or hobby, but since we're talking about careers, in your job, where you can apply it, whether it's summarizing documents with Notebook LM or generating your marketing images or coding. Find an area where it works and then just get really good at it, because as you keep doing it, that's the other thing, the technology evolves, and as you keep doing it, you will evolve along with it. You will be aware of the latest developments in that field.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any other tangible pieces of advice around like where to actually start to learn AI? I really like Maarten's point about just like getting stuck in finding a use case and just like building your competence. Has anyone else got anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Erik, you go.
Well, I mean, what we've done in the office is actually send everybody to a course in doing exactly what you did, Elena, to build your own agents, but also find use cases in your own work that you would want to build an AI agent for. So this way people start to think about like, hey, how is this tool useful to me? Right? Just like people had to learn at some point that email was super useful in your work, internet was super useful in your work, all of this. And we are in the same phase that it needs to become a living subject for people, and they need to think like, okay, so this is actually, yeah, a very super versatile tool, and how will it work for me? And you need to, yeah, give them some inspiration that they start to think, that they understand more or less what the tool is. And then, yeah, as Maarten says, it becomes practice, practice, practice. And there you go. Then if you have the right people with the right mindset, then they are off. They are out of the boxes, racing on the track, making really nice things. Yeah.
Thanks, Erik. Ahmed, what did you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think, yeah, really, really important points both Maarten and Erik mentioned. I think if you are a complete novice and you sort of shied away from it, or just had no particular interest in it, believe it or not, my wife is one of them. So she, yeah, has no particular interest. I think if you're at that sort of stage, you know, you wanted to start, I think looking at the larger language models, that's probably more popular at this moment in time to get stuck in is probably OpenAI's ChatGPT. You've got Google's Gemini, Claude, which is probably one of my favorites as well. So just playing around with those. And I think just on a professional perspective, on a day-to-day, look at your workflows. What works? What doesn't? What do you enjoy doing? What don't you enjoy doing? What seems like a repetitive task? What can be automated? I think that's probably, yeah, going to help you massively in the long run. And then, you know, shopping for what tools are actually going to work for you is probably going to be the most difficult thing. But I think that's a good place to start.
So
and in
let's
the law
talk.
firm, by the way, this is really interesting what Ahmed said, because we use the thought experiment. If you could employ your own personal assistant and your own paralegal, what would you make them do? And people
Interesting.
come up with all kinds of stuff, and we'd say, AI can do this for you. Exactly that.
Yeah, I really like that actually. That's a good action point actually to take back to the team and actually ask them that question and see what they come out with. I speak to a lot of leaders who maybe are really high in their organizations, and they're looking at it from a very big kind of organizational perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And the teams that I've seen have real success with bringing AI into their business have been where they've taken almost like a bottom-up approach, in the sense where it's really the people that are doing the work making the suggestions on, hey, I think actually this would be really good because this is a big, you know, time suck for us, right? But it's empowered by the leadership. So what that looks like is leaders are literally saying, hey, I'm using AI, I'm using ChatGPT, you know, like I'm using AI in my day to day. So the team can see that it's not kind of forbidden in the organization. But in terms of like where you bring AI in and where the quick wins are, the teams that are doing it the best that I've seen have been where the leaders have actually asked the team to bring the ideas and the solutions and build bottom up in that way. Let's talk more about QARA, because that's the audience that we've got here. Just
Mm-hmm.
briefly, what would you say are like the quick wins where AI can be applied? Maarten?
Well, I think the quickest win is information retrieval. So there's a lot of looking up and checking and combining regulations and guidances, and AI does that very, very well and very, very quickly. So be prepared to have a lot of time left that you're not searching PDFs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a quick win.
Yeah.
I think the other one we already talked about outside the RA context, and then I'll give it to Erik, is the sparring partner. You know, coming up with strategies. You know, how do we do our sampling plan for the notified body? What is a good answer to this non-conformity? I wrote this. Can you judge it? You know, so I think the buddy, the virtual sidekick, I think is very powerful.
Yeah, love that.
Very easy to use.
Erik, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think the buddy aspect that Maarten mentioned, I think you cannot overestimate that in regulatory affairs. Typically, what I would do is with our own AI or with Claude is I will actually ask it to argue for and against a particular position, for example, for regulatory arguments. And if I have to argue against, I don't know, a competent authority, I will ask the AI to tell me why are they right and then why are they wrong, right? So this all really gives you a lot more room to maneuver. Then one other thing, but maybe that's applied information retrieval that Maarten mentioned is, I would say, strategizing in areas that might not be your own strongest point, that you still need to have an opinion about. So normally you would go to Wikipedia like Maarten, and then you would try to understand organic chemistry, or you would try to understand cybersecurity, or just enough to answer the question. This is where a good AI is invaluable, because it will basically explain to you in the level of complication that you ask it to exactly what you would need to know. And this is really, I mean, for me personally, I'm not a biochemist, for example, but I can make pretty sophisticated biochemical argumentations for borderline discussions, for example, because the AI helps me and explains to me like, okay, maybe tweak it a bit like this and a bit like that. If you use Claude, it will even get you really funny jokes about biochemistry, so that makes it nice to work with. And yeah, and then I think from an organizational perspective, there's also the interesting situation that if you do specifically this, what I mentioned, it is easier for the RA/QA department to integrate itself into design and development from an earlier stage, because you understand better what other people are doing. This will allow an organization to roll out a better compliance by design paradigm, if you will, because the design people can also do this from their side. So basically everything integrates better and you'll get better design products, not a product that is like AI separate, data separate, biocomp separate, this separate. And in the end, you sort of try to hammer all these things through holes that they don't fit in, and then get a lot of rounding errors in the process.
You make a really good point. And one tip that I have, but there's another question I want to ask, but one tip that I have that I've seen leaders use really effectively is helping it to structure an important conversation that might be coming up with somebody who is not of their expertise or not of their personality type, right? So depending on if you what kind of personality type methodology you follow, right? Like if we go with the basic one and there's like 4 different kind of colors, you know, if you're a blue person, that's typically quite introvert and analytical and, you know, in the details, and you're trying to pitch something to a CEO who maybe is like red, who just wants, you know, like the top level details, but like no more information. Like I want it in one sentence and let me ask you more questions and don't waste my time. Then actually you can use it to sort of say like, this is the information I want to portray. Like this is, you know, the persona of the person I'm trying to portray it to. What would be the best way to communicate that in order to get my message across effectively? And actually can really help you bridge the gap when it comes to communication across functional areas and across personality types. But one thing, Erik, I want to lean on, because you made a really good point about how, you know, you can now make some quite credible arguments by using AI in areas that maybe are not your discipline. The question that I do really have, and I'm interested on your take, is regulation and quality historically has been a function that has been rewarded by having access to information, technical information, information that other people haven't had. A lot of the value of the role has been, you know, the people that can navigate that gray zone because they know stuff that other people don't. And so now we're entering a world where information has become much more readily accessible. So information is not going to be the access to the information is not the differentiator anymore. If you are somebody who is a subject matter expert with information that everybody now has access to, how do you differentiate yourself and where does your true value lie?
nice question. Well, I mean, I would say look at Facebook, look at Instagram. More information doesn't equal more capabilities, right? So there is still very much case for skills rather than tasks. I think it's important that we started with this. So let's say, for example, if you take as a task being able to build Excel sheets very, very well with very complex formula, which I absolutely totally detest. This is something that the AI will do for you fantastically, right? But you also need to know strategically, conceptually, context-wise, where does this information need to go? What is it needed for? What data endpoints am I looking for? What are the outcomes that my organization wants? And this is something that an AI doesn't know. So this is why you'll always be interesting to the organization. But this, you need to think like this, right? So you need to elevate yourself to a level where you can say, well, I'm not the best formula builder in Excel, but hey, I can tell the AI what formula I need, and that is commodity. So what we've basically seen now is in the economy, we've seen a development where hardware is slowly becoming a commodity, right? Because everybody can build the same thing. Mm-hmm. Now with information and tasks, we are seeing a bit the same thing, that everybody can perform the same task. So tasks are becoming commoditized by AI. So what you need is context and expertise. This is where you're important.
Yeah, so
at the risk of sounding like Columbo, can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
So I think for me, the role of the subject matter expert is also the validation of the AI results. Like I always see AI as a junior colleague, so I always want to check the output. Mm-hmm. But if I don't know biochemistry, and I don't know it either, I would need a biochemist to check it. Mm-hmm. So the biochemist has the role of that human in the loop. Now the big difference becomes that previously the biochemist was the only one who could do the work at all. So someone would come with, hey, I have a biochemistry question. Here it is, Foop, yours. And the biochemist would have to do all the work. And now people with less knowledge, but augmented with AI, can do the groundwork and say, biochemist, could you check if I did it right? Which is probably a lot less time spent. So the subject matter expert becomes much more effective because they can leverage their expertise over many more people.
Interesting. When I think about the impact of that on work and projects, for example, I can imagine a situation where companies might try and do more of that stuff in-house if they can. And then, so my question, Ahmed, like for what you're seeing then, do you see a situation in which companies would prefer to really have the deep specialist? So is it better to, my question is it better to be a deep specialist or to be more of a broad generalist? If you were gonna sort of say, this is the direction I think it's gonna go in, what would be your professional take on that?
I don't think you probably like the answer to this, but there's definitely a sort of straddles between both. I think
it depends. The classic regulatory answer.
The classic, and just to the point, you guys sort of mentioned it earlier. I think a subject matter expert would not only provide nuance and confidence, but also provides that accountability as well. I think just in terms of the difference between a generalist and a deep specialist, you're absolutely right. If someone is a subject matter expert and they know exactly what, I don't know, what regulatory pathway the company should take and why they should take it because they've gone through that process themselves, and what sort of reasons why it might have failed before, and not making that same mistake again, they have lived experience through that process. And I think that's invaluable. But also, you don't also want to be in a position, just generally speaking on a wider context, have a very niche skill that could also become obsolete over a period of time. And we've seen it in different examples throughout different industries. So there is the argument of, and I was saying this earlier, having expertise one core area, but also having a good amount of knowledge and being able to work cross-functionally across different departments and having a broader context from that perspective, because you have so much value to add. And if you guys are not aware, but there is that sort of team model that people tend to go off. And I think, having one particular core skill, but also having other areas that supplement it. I like to call it skill building. I think, Maarten, I think you may sort of mentioned it, something along those lines earlier, but you kind of want to stack up your skills over a period of time so you can add value in different ways.
So then what makes people more employable now compared to the last couple of years?
That's a really interesting question. Now, more so than ever, it's having those hybrid skills that I was mentioning. It's having AI fluency and having the sort of the literacy in terms of what your workflow looks like, how you can improve it. Ultimately, all our clients, the common theme is, what value can they add? And that could be, reducing risk, it can be reducing costs, it could be reducing time. There's so many sort of key aspects of becoming employable for an organization and why they see the value there. But overwhelmingly, and I'm sure there's quite a few consultants maybe that know me on this call, but one thing they probably heard me say multiple times is visibility. Professional sort of positioning, some people would sort of tend to call it, but what are you good at? Do people know that you're good at that particular thing? Are you sort of reachable? Do you have contact details? And that's something that I obviously do on a day-to-day basis, speaking to consultants, understanding what their specialisms are, being able to provide that to our clients. Obviously, we can discuss that further in terms of how we do that offline here, but I'm sure you guys will contact me after. But I think it's really, really important just to have that visibility as well. And I think for anyone who's sort of looking to become employable, making sure that you're networking, making sure that your LinkedIn's up to date, understanding what sort of new technologies you're using, and being able to showcase that.
Yeah, on the visibility point, I mean, I'm a big believer in LinkedIn, right? And there are certain people in the industry, Erik is one of them, who have really leaned into it and really built, quiet authority is the new word that I'm going with, which is like authority around a certain subject area without being self-promotional and saying, hey, I'm great, just by sharing valuable input around a certain topic that people find helpful and interesting will immediately start to differentiate you. And so when you are going forward for an opportunity or a job or a project or whatever, everybody's checking out your LinkedIn, right? And so if they go to your profile and they can see that you've been talking about these things, or, that you've got opinions about these things and you're active in the domain that you say is your specialty, it adds another layer of credibility that I think is going to be a distinguishing factor in the future. So I want to talk a little bit about transverse skills. I'm just conscious of time because in a couple of minutes we're going to go to the live Q&A. But I want to talk about, Maarten, because you mentioned curiosity, which I would call that a trend. I didn't make it up. This was actually IBEC that released a really nice report on really important skills, in particular for the MedTech sector. And they identified transverse skills as essentially what historically were soft skills. They go across all different functions, but they're essential, and they're essential for the future, even more so now that AI is coming in. So curiosity is one of them that you spoke about. But then the question becomes, how do you hire for these transverse skills? Because historically it has been, for a lot of companies, it has been, a matching exercise between, okay, do you have knowledge with ISO 13485? Yes, it's on your CV. Yes, I can qualify. You've done that. But actually now, how do you hire for people that in the future, you don't even know what you're going to need? So ways of thinking become more important. What tips do you have in your experience? Because I'm sure you've hired loads of people at Elekta.
Yeah, I have. At multiple companies, actually. I think I've always hired for the transfer skills more than the normal skills. Of course, I don't want to say that you don't need any normal skills. If you hire a regulatory person now and they don't know what ISO 13485 is, they're not going to be able to function, right? So they are important, but I think we're in need of, as you say, a far cry from the CV with job description matching bullet by bullet point, right? That's not it. So I think especially if we're talking up to and about leadership today, I think it's always been, what is this person's innate motivation, innate curiosity? Because innovation, it's not just technology, right? Someone making an AI tool. Innovation is also, let's try this in a different way. Software as a service instead of software in a box on a CD-ROM, right? That was a new business model. Someone came up with that as innovation. And that way of thinking is, I think, has always been and is now maybe even more important.
I'll tell you what we're seeing. Assessment centers becoming more important, like assessment, like actual practical assessment. And I'm not saying like, here's a task, go away over the weekend and bring it for a presentation on Monday. So something that we've started doing with some of the companies that we're working with is actually building into the recruitment process an assessment that will check for things like critical thinking or ability to take feedback, or, you know, where people have to literally think on their feet in a given scenario and see how they adapt without the big preparation beforehand. And that can be quite telling, because when people are kind of in that environment under stress, it kind of creates an immediate reaction that as a hiring manager, you can kind of see what that person's default would then be. And so that's one thing that we're seeing as helping to reverse engineer hiring processes by putting
exactly what we do, Elena. We have
Is it?
an
Okay.
assessment center.
We do that as well here.
In the process. I actually advocated for including a Last Starfighter type recruiting process, or an Ender's Game recruiting process, or Ready Player One. This is all for the sci-fi fans, which are like really complex simulated assessment centers. But no, we send people to an assessment center where they're tested for intelligence, adaptability. They have to do case studies on the spot.
Yeah.
They are in a scenario where they have to convince management that a particular merger should go through or not, and so on. So this is really what we're looking for. And even in my own personal interviews with people, I ask them, like, how can we improve our law firm? Because that is a really nice question, because it shows that people have actually looked at what we are, what we do, how they think that actually things could be better. Usually some smart people say, oh, you could start by improving your website because it looks pretty outdated. And that is already a score from you, right?
Yeah.
I will say that there is a risk. I mean, I don't disagree with what was said, and I do hire to those skills as well. But there is a risk that you bias towards the people who are quick on their feet, and the thinkers, the people maybe on the blue side of the profile dynamics, right? They need to sit down and process and then come up with a perfect answer. You need some of those as well. You need a balance in your team, right? So it's not only the gung-ho people say, oh, let's go and update the website. And I mean, that could lead to a disaster.
Also true. I think what's important is to really simulate as much as possible what the role would require, right? So like, where are those moments where these skills become really important for that specific role, and try to bake that into your hiring process, that you're testing for that, but without. I do believe that, like, at the moment, you know, giving somebody a test and giving someone a case study like in the old days how they used to do it, I don't think that that's hugely valuable anymore, because unfortunately there's just so much available that you're not necessarily seeing what somebody is delivering. But this is another conversation for another time, and I'm conscious that it's time to go into the live Q&A. But you can see, guys, that this is such a hot topic, and I'm sure everybody's got a lot to say on it. And thank you to my panel for your contribution this far. I'll give you a second to have a break and have a sip of water. I'm going to share this Slido for those of you that may have joined a little bit late. So you can scan this QR code. And now what we're going to do is we're going to run with the live Q&As to see how many questions we can answer. So we're going to try and go kind of quick fire as much as possible. So I don't need everybody to answer the question. One person can take it. The goal is to try to answer as many questions as possible. And if you have a question, add it to the Slido. If you don't, scan the code anyway and thumbs up the ones that you like the look of, because we're going to be going through this in order of popularity. So without further ado, the first question here is, and it's going to come up in the chat for the panel as well, how relevant are certifications versus experience, and how should specialists and managers compare for, I think that probably means prepare for leadership roles? how relevant are certifications versus experience, and how should specialists and managers compare for leadership roles? Who wants to take that?
Yeah, I can take that one. Especially the sort of the relevance of certifications versus experience. I'm always an advocate for experience. A lot of our clients much prefer someone who's gone through that process before, who have the experience, the know-how, and be able to share those experiences. There's obviously space for certifications, and I think that could provide a base, a platform. But I think experience always sort of outweighs anything else, and I think yeah, the certification aspect is definitely a good starting point to leverage off of, but experience always is number one for me. In terms of preparing for leadership roles, I think it's really, really important just to network and connect with other sort of leaders across different businesses as well. Elena, this is probably an answer for you, a question for you definitely to answer, because I know you've sort of supported a lot of people who made that transition from sort of specialists to managers to senior leadership positions. But yeah, the power of networking is I know for firsthand, is massively important.
Yeah, I talk a lot. I think I've got a video coming out about this soon, because it's a constant question that I'm asked, which is like, should I do this certificate or not? And I don't know any hiring manager that would prioritize somebody with a certificate and not a lived experience over someone that has the lived experience, unless it was a role that really required a specific certificate. So like, if you need to be a medical doctor to do the surgery, then yeah, you need to be, they're not going to hire someone who doesn't have that. But if it's
But has experience.
yeah, right. You don't want to hire someone to do a surgery that doesn't have the experience. But most of the time, the certificates themselves, they're not the things that will get you the promotion. They won't get you the job. You know, they're the things that decorate your CV, but the results, decorate LinkedIn, but the results decorate your CV, and the results are the most important thing. So I talk about building a portfolio of experience. So look for stretch roles, look for opportunities where you can go a little bit outside of the classic, and you can add that to your CV in terms of your portfolio of experience. That is what gets you hired, as well as obviously the network and the visibility and all of that. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add to that, or we'll jump to the next question.
Well, I can add something. I mean, for the legal profession, certificates are also important, right? Because they are a regulatory requirement. Otherwise, the Bar Association will not accept you, for example. So they're always baseline criteria. But what I would look like at is, for example, how did you pass the certificate? Was it a narrow pass or was it a comfortable pass, for example?
Interesting.
And what I also look at is, did you combine certificates? Like, for example, did you do the absolutely mandatory stuff, or, and this is again the curiosity element that Maarten mentioned, and also the, basically understanding what is needed in your function. Are you also pursuing certificates that are not 100% mandatory in your job description, but show that you are actually trying to augment yourself into a more a rounded person with a broader context? These are really the things I would look at, and these are typically the more curious persons that do that, whether they are blue or not. Because the blue ones, actually, they are the guys that go for the certificates, because this is something they can do, right? They are like, okay, I can learn, I can do the exam, I can get the certificate. So people that have that kind of profile can definitely also show an immense value by making unusual but still logical combinations of certificates that are useful to the company and set them apart from other people.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Erik. So we've got another question, and this one is one that I know is a concern for a lot of people. So we're gonna go with it. What practical advice or best practices would you suggest for adopting and leveraging AI responsibly and effectively in this highly regulated field? Because this is the fact that it's a highly regulated field is a concern for a lot of people. Erik, Maarten, this is definitely something for one of you. Who wants to take it?
Well, I'm going to sound like a commercial here, but we actually have a webinar on it tomorrow at lunchtime. So it is indeed a concern, right? So bringing this non-deterministic tool into our regulated environment, oh dear. but this has been done and there's expertise around it. So in view of time, I would just suggest that you go to the LinkedIn page and sign up for the free augmented professional webinar tomorrow at noon Central European.
Okay, so there you have it, guys. More detail coming on that tomorrow. Okay, so next, which new skills will QA professionals need for auditor roles by 2026, particularly risk-based auditing, data analytics, and AI in quality and regulatory?
Skills specifically. Yeah, then know how to work with an AI, because if you are auditing, this is again, audit is basically information retrieval, right? Because but also pattern recognition. So I would say that you really need to think about like what sets a very good auditor apart. I would say it is ability of information retrieval, pattern recognition, but also experience, like what typically happens in this particular situation, because it makes you more efficient. So then the next step is, how am I going to use AI for that? Then there are a couple of really easy steps. First of all, am I allowed to use the AI in the first place, right? Or is this an AI I can safely use? So not a public free ChatGPT version, for example, because if you do that, that's a big no-no in an audit, of course. But you have a tool that the organization has ring-fenced in a way that the data can't get out. Then think about what are the things where I usually come up short in an audit. Basically, if I could choose my own super skills, or as I've said earlier, if I could employ mini-me's to work for me during the audit, what would they be doing? This is what I task to AI, and this is what I need to understand. So if my mini-me's go off on information retrieval in an audit, I need to understand what I would expect to see as a result, and what the AIs come back with is a hallucination or not. That's where it starts for me.
Thanks for that, Erik. Okay, next question. So if AI democratizes information, which human skills will drive better decision making in 2026 and beyond? So we've already mentioned curiosity is one human skill that you believe is really important. What other ones would you say?
I would say a critical outlook, and not critical as in pessimistic, but AI will be able to generate much information much faster than we can process it. So I think we need to teach ourselves to review these outputs, right? And I know vendors like us, we are trying to make it easier to do that, to shape the output in such a way that it is easily verified. Because productivity is going to increase. So all the junior RA people are going to produce a lot of things and say, boss, check it. And a lot is coming at you. So I think that is a skill that you have to develop.
I think critical thinking is one that keeps coming up time and time again as something that's critical for, to focus on. Anything else, Ahmed?
Yeah, I sort of was thinking about there's sort of understanding the context in detail. I think human beings are obviously a lot better than AI when it comes to judgment, context, creativity, and I think from an innovation perspective, I think honing in on your creative elements and your creative aspects and producing something new. I think that's a skill that regardless of AI being far better than humans when it comes to sort of information, the speed of information, as well as sort of looking at large data sets and sort of being able to go through that a lot better than humans. I think just from a creative perspective, I think that's definitely going to be a valuable skill that naturally as humans, I think we can tap into.
Thank you for that. The only other one that I would add that really brings to mind for me is like relationship building. I really believe that relationship, like the ability to build like strong relationships with people on a person-to-person level has always been important. But, you know, there was a time where meetings went online, stuff would happen on chat. I think people now are skeptical, you know, like, is that thing that's messaging me, is that a real person, or is it a chat bot? Even to the point where, you know, we've been talking about there will be virtual influencers, right? So people that you follow on LinkedIn, how do you even know that they're real? The people that you follow on Instagram, how do you even know if they're real? And so I think the ability to like build connection with people starts to become more and more important. So we almost go full circle back to like human skills, the things that make us uniquely different. But I really like Maarten's concepts of humans augmented by AI. I don't think it's going to replace, but I think that it can definitely allow us to focus on the things that make us unique a lot better. Okay, next question. Aren't we risking de-skilling core competencies in this industry as AI automates analytical reasoning and shifts focus to clinical prompt engineering? Aren't we risking Erik, go on.
No, because if there are critical skills, then you are not, they shouldn't be eroded by AI. Let me give you an example, right? Because the model of regulatory augmentation that Maarten mentioned, it's basically the Kasparov model. Garry Kasparov was a chess player, and chess players have been defeated by computers for some time, right? But once chess players started to work together with computers, you got a new league of augmented chess players, because these chess players could not be out brute forced by basically computer power, but the players themselves, they did have all the inspiration that is needed. You see it again with DeepMind that beat this world champion in Go. It beat it because it was able to come up with a strategy that was so unconventional that the world champion didn't conceive that this would actually be used. This is another case study of why you always need cooperation, because humans are always better in knowing the context in which the work needs to be implemented. So they are always better in final planning, final context. But this is so in the end, these core skills will never be less important, because these define the outcomes for the end result, and the AI can never feel them as good as the person.
I think that's really important. You know, it's this thing that we were talking about, like the augmented human rather than the replaced human. We're all coming at this from a positive perspective. I'm going to take a second just to share my screen again, to bring up the QR code for those of you that, I don't know, have joined late or missed it. We're now in the live Q&A section. So please scan this QR code. It's going to take you to Slido, and it's going to give you, there's already questions there that have been pre-registered. Some of them we've already covered. But if you have a question that hasn't been touched on yet, you know, you can ask it anonymously. So we won't even know who's asked it. I will read it out, but we will have a chance to directly address that question to our panel here. So please take a second to go in and either upvote the questions that you like the look of or ask a new question. And there's a question in here that really caught my eye, and I really want to address it and give some time to it, because I've been in conferences where this has come up again and again, and it's this concept of like, what's going to happen to the intern, right? Is, you know, we've been speaking about AI as an assistant. You give AI the junior tasks or the grunt work. In the past, that would have been the intern that you would have given that work to. That would have been essentially their first foot in the door. There's people that have kids that are, you know, coming up to graduation age or so, and they're really concerned, you know, what does this actually mean for the future generation that are coming through? I'm interested in your opinions. Do you think AI is going to replace the intern?
No. It's the same story. I've hired interns recently, so I can speak from very recent experience. And these interns are much more productive than the interns of maybe 10 years ago, because they have augmented themselves with tools. So, for example, out of a QARA was a marketing intern, And lady is 20-something, really, really smart, but can generate very professional looking marketing copy and not copy, I mean graphics, that would have taken an agency a while ago. So the interns may not learn the same things they learned 10 years ago, just like, you know, they didn't have to when they went into finance, they didn't have to first go on the abacus and then the pocket calculator. They come straight in with Excel or with a e-accounting tool background, right? So the interns are also different. The interns will not be replaced. The interns will come in at a higher productivity level.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, I think just yeah, just to add on that, I think it'll also I think we also shouldn't shy away from the fact that it's a very difficult job market for new grads. I think over the past sort of 18 months, 24 months, it has definitely been a challenge. And I think the classic argument of, you know, people looking to get into the industry notoriously were perhaps doing the grunt work, and a lot of those sort of tasks have now sort of, you know, become automated, or, you know, not as much as in demand. But I think that breeds into something more looking into the future, more innovation. So on Maarten's example, I think that's very, very prominent. I think from people looking to get into the sort of healthcare technology sector, the leaders that I've spoken to, new graduates who I speak to on a daily basis as well, understanding that it will allow them to become a lot more innovative, and they'll be able to grasp, you know, new concepts a lot quicker, and that's just going to facilitate more growth within the industry. So yeah, it's I think they'll be focusing more on that sort of 20%, that sort of more high value, and you know, working quite closely with subject matter experts, and being able to provide sort of innovative ideas quite early on. So yeah, I think that's my answer on that particular topic.
Yeah, I think that I saw, I think it was the CEO Demis Hassabis talking about this, and it really resonated, because I think that interns, they junior people, you know, people that aren't in work at the moment, they have an incredible opportunity because they are time rich right now. And you know, when you've got a day job, right, your diary is already fully booked of things that you're doing and trying to keep up to date with. You're in meetings, you're doing this, you've got your home life, and at the same time you're trying to learn and build this new skill as you go. Whereas if you aren't in a job right now, you know, you can spend all your time developing this skill to the point where you can become really proficient in how to use it. That gives you an immediate advantage. So that's a relevant comment for, like, if you're a grad looking to enter the job market, but equally if you're someone right now who, you know, for whatever reason, there's maybe been a reorganization and you're on the job market, job hunting, my best advice is, like, spend time learning how to use AI and how you can apply that in your role, because that is the question that companies are asking now when they're interviewing. Like, how are you using that? How are you incorporating it? And you, as somebody who is not sitting in a job right now, you have all that time to be spending developing this skill, where somebody else might only have, you know, a little bit, you know, an hour, not even an hour a day, half an hour a day, you know, wherever they can fit it in. It gives you a massive competitive advantage. So that for me was a key takeaway. I don't think interns are going to be replaced, but I definitely think the way that they're going to come into the workforce, as Maarten said, is going to be really different.
We also see it in legal training, by the way, now, where people actually, as part of their university program, have to build AI agents that can apply specific legislation, for example. So this is actually a skill that's already in progress, and if you don't have it yet, then you might look yourself and think about, like, yeah, what's a nice problem that I could science to basically science the shit out, so to say, for a prospective employer or a company to hire me, to basically show off what I can do. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that as a prospective employer would really make me very happy if I could see if you have somebody on a job interview that says, here, look what I built. This solves problems for you. Fantastic. I mean, these are the persons you want.
Yeah, 100%. And this is this concept of building a portfolio of experience. I know that there was a question on here as well around, like, what certificate can I get? And the point is, the portfolio of experience is much more valuable to a company. So rather than saying like, I've done this course and I have this certificate that says I know how to do AI into regulatory affairs, it's like, these are the agents that I've built, these are the workflows that I've impacted, and being able to actually build a list, a portfolio of tangible things, accomplishments, that you have been able to say, I was part of creating that. That is what is really powerful for companies, especially at the moment where a lot of companies, they don't know where to even begin, you know, and to even say like, I built an agent that did a very small task, but it was a really small thing, and it actually freed me up to do X, Y, and Z, immediately makes you much more employable, and much more attractive for employers, whether you're going in as a consultant on a project or perm, you know, as a career move.
Yeah, it could be like, for example, that you say like, well, we have this Copilot powered quality management system software, and it doesn't really work for us for small projects. But you know what I did? I vibe coded a Kanban a swim lane organization board to basically science a conformity assessment procedure at a notified body, and it does much better than the company tool we have. This is like 10 out of 10 kind
100%.
of behavior. Yeah.
100%. So there's one question here. So what is one practical skill that we should learn this quarter to ensure that we aren't obsolete by 2026?
Vibe coding.
Vibe coding. What is vibe coding? For those who don't know vibe coding.
Vibe coding is coding by using English language. So instead of saying stuff with curly braces, you give a prompt to an AI and it makes software for you. Example I did as a hobby, so I'm also curious, and this was not business related. I took a screen movie of a game that I was playing because it had ads in it. I found them annoying. I dumped the movie into the vibe coding tool and said, make me that game. And it did it. I was actually surprised. So vibe coding is programming without knowing how to program. There are limits to that. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work and then you have to know some programming to get it working again. Maybe, Elena, you've done that. But those limits are moving further out, as everything in AI.
Ahmed?
So,
Yeah, no, I was going to say that as well. But for, I don't want to plug any particular companies, but I know there's a quick Google if you search vibe coding. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of sponsored ads, but yeah, there's platforms that you can play around with for sure.
Yeah. And Erik, one skill that people should learn to not be obsolete by the end of the year?
I already blurted out vibe coding.
But, oh yeah, vibe coding.
That was you.
And then Maarten validated that kindly for me. So yes, and you know why it is so important to learn vibe coding? For example, in my own business, where people are very procedural, very cerebral, very knowledge and rule based, they don't like technology that much. It's a very good way to challenge your natural horror of technology, right? And it's easier than you think, but you could even start at a lower level than vibe coding, and I would say learn really good and effective prompting of an AI agent. That's already a very good skill, right? Because this is basically good vibe coding also starts with good prompting. But good prompting is, I would say, it's the most basic of skills. Understand how you prompt an AI well, and basically, and also how you prompt it wrong, how you actually get the results you're not looking for.
I would say though, like on the prompting piece, because last year there was a whole thing of like, the new skill that everybody should learn is to go out and learn how to do prompt engineering and, you know, like write really, really good prompts. What I've seen, I don't know about you guys, but what I've seen is that like the gap between like writing a really good prompt and not writing a good prompt is getting smaller, because now you can actually have the AI write the really good prompt for you if you write a good first prompt that says, help me write a good prompt for this tool to do X, Y, Z. Now,
but then you're still in the which rock is too big for God to lift, right?
Yeah.
Because in the end, of course, you can write a shitty prompt and then the AI can basically try and bootstrap itself to make it better. But in the end, you know the outcome. So this is what you should prompt for. I mean, in the end, an AI can't turn shit into gold. That's just how it works.
Yeah,
I think you're both right. So sorry, Ahmed. Prompt engineering is a time limited skill. I think in a few years, we won't be typing things to our AI as if this was a text adventure game on MS-DOS, right? So that skill is going to go away. But for now, it's still very relevant. So the people who said that last year were not wrong. But I think in a few years, we won't need that skill anymore.
So I'm just going through some of these questions. So some of them we've already answered around where to begin. So if you join this late, the recording will be available for you to go and see. One question here: will AI tools eventually force a merger between clinical quality and regulatory affairs? Ahmed?
Yeah, I think, yeah, from my experience, from startup companies in particular, quality and regulatory is always kind of emerged anyway. It's I don't really necessarily see a change in that. I think the larger corporations will always, there'll be functions for quality, there will be functions for regulatory, and quite equally clinical as well. But I don't necessarily see that being a huge sort of transformational change that's gonna happen. I think there's obviously the argument of the reduction in staff within certain functions. That's probably already happening, but I think for startup companies, it's already kind of merged anyway, so it's not necessarily going to change anything from that perspective. But yeah, my immediate answer is no.
Yeah. What I do, rather than being merged kind of crossways across the functions, again, if you're in a small company, typically it kind of already is typically like that sort of anyway. You might have like a leader of quality, regulatory and clinical kind of sitting together, or if you're the only person, you probably wear a lot of hats already. In the larger organizations, the departments are so structured that would be really difficult to untangle. So I don't really see that happening. What I do see is the flattening of structures. So and that's where we're talking about maybe, teams that maybe had a lot of hierarchy in them no longer need that much hierarchy. Maybe they're structured in a way where you have AI augmented, to use Maarten's concept, AI enabled experts with like a manager, but then you don't necessarily need so many layers above then. So that's where I see that middle layer is where I see a flattening happening.
And a stronger PMO. Business
PMO.
unit, yeah, within those organizations, just to consolidate and making sure that teams are sort of working together and everything's sort of harmonious with regards to their approach. But yeah, I could probably see that happening more.
I'd say that the borderlines between the departments would get more fuzzy.
Yeah.
Because now what you see in organizations, that you sometimes have these people that link departments, right? That these people are essential to basically make departments cooperate in the first place.
Yeah.
And this is something that you will see less. So the borderlines between departments will become more fuzzy. But I don't think you will see like merging of departments and then with a bunch of people that does the exact same thing in it. That's not happening.
There's a really deep philosophical question that I'm going to save maybe to the end. I'm just having a quick scroll to see if there's anything else that really jumps out. What's one thing happening in the broader healthcare or technology world right now that QA/RA professionals aren't talking about enough? So sort of like more the broader business context. Maarten?
I'm surprised that the EU AI Act is still a bit of a thing like, oh yeah, maybe we'll look at that sometime, but it's right here. So that's a surprise to me, because as we see AI in all sorts of our tools, we'll see them in all sorts of medical devices and IVDs as well. So that for me is the strange thing.
What for those who maybe are not so familiar with why you're saying that this is an important thing that people should be paying attention to, I know Erik as well, you go deep on the AI Act. Like why is this something that people should really be spending more time looking at?
Well, first of all, and Erik is much more versed, as you say, in this, but not all things that fall under the AI Act are actually AI, as ChatGPT or how we understand it.
Yeah.
So there are certain algorithms that are classified as AI, and there are a lot of quite stringent requirements. I mean, they may change, they may not change, but for now they're here, and that really can affect your go-to-market strategy for a medical device. So I've been surprised that is not top of mind for companies yet.
Interesting.
Even if they're developing the products already.
Yeah. Anyone else got anything to add to that point?
Yeah, I have an interesting one. It's AI related,
Okay.
but also clinical more broadly, I would say, and that is quality of data sets, because quality of data
Yes.
sets is a super big element everywhere.
Mm.
And what we see more and more is that there are requirements under the MDR that data sets need to be unbiased for the whole intended purpose of the device. You see in the AI Act that there's a requirement that AIs need to be trained on unbiased data sets. And what is still the rule for clinical research? That is a white guy template like me as basically sole source or predominant source for clinical data. And that is not going to fly anymore in the future, I think. And this is something that in some countries you see actually movements against it, right? In the US, for example, where they're saying like it is prohibited to actually have unbiased data sets. Whereas in Europe, I think, I hope I don't offend anybody, but this is my own personal view of how this works. And in the EU, you see that actually the quality of data becomes more and more important. And what you will see, I think, later on is that companies that ignore this will see their intended purpose of their devices limited by regulators, because they will say, sorry, but you can't show sufficiently unbiased data for a whole patient population. So we are going to shrink your intended purpose to the patient population that you can show unbiased data for. And this is something that people are not talking about enough, I think.
Very interesting. That's a really interesting. I wasn't aware of that either. So I hope
Well,
that.
as a woman, you should be.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
need to
yeah.
be
No,
concerned about
definitely. Like,
it.
it wasn't on my radar. So for sure,
Yeah.
this is something that I think is
Or
like
as a person of color,
obvious.
same thing. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. They were on the topic of data sets. I did a podcast with Michelle Wu. It was released, I think, about a month ago, and she has like the expertise. She's in Silicon Valley and working with a lot of medtech companies. And one of the things that she kind of shared was that a lot of medtech companies, although they have a lot of data, actually the way that it's structured and the quality of the data itself is actually really, really important, especially if you want to start to like bring AI into your organization and run it through.
yeah.
And that's also something that companies, you know, don't seem to be fully understanding of. And so there's a piece of work that needs to also be done there. I have a final question because I'm conscious that we're coming towards the end of such a fascinating discussion on future skills. 5 years from now, what will successful quality regulatory professionals be doing differently than they're doing today? So if you fast forward 5 years, what will successful people be doing differently than what they're doing today? Ahmed, let me start with you.
Yeah, from conversations that I've been having, more on people's day-to-day and understanding what the future of their roles would look like. I've been in a position where I'm able to collate that information and understand what that looks like, you know, from their perspective. And I think the interesting thing I've probably heard is that, yeah, some aspects of their roles will change and they're sort of familiar with that, but there'll be more strategic and more sort of looking at it from a risk perspective on a day-to-day, understanding patterns, data sets, looking at data sets in particular, understanding, you know, what does that mean for them. From a CAPA perspective, I think the interesting point was rather than remediation, it's going to be more innovation. And I think that was really, really an interesting talking point for them because they want to, yeah, reduce any mistakes that a human can make, but with the implementation of AI to speed up their processes and make it look easier for them. So I think that's probably something that they will sort of look at 5 years from now and say, it's probably saved us a lot of time. And yeah, I think there'll be more embedded within the organization, more commercially minded. And yeah, I think that's from the collation of not interviews, but conversations that we've been having with our clients and consultants. I think that's been the key takeaway.
Thanks, Ahmed. Erik?
5 years is a long time, because in
Yeah.
5 years we might have left Earth and be living in a spaceship
Mars.
with a Wall-E situation and an AI piloting the spaceship telling us it's not safe to go back to Earth. But more realistically, or this is realistic, maybe not very probable, but still realistic, more probably, I think what your day-to-day life will look like is that you'll be managing your own fleet of AI agents that are continuously running off, doing tasks for you, getting back, and then you as a project manager of your AIs and overlord that knows what you're looking for in the end, integrating the information, looking at whether the result is what you expect, course correcting, things like that. So you'll be much more in a situation where you'd be delegating tasks to AI rather than, as for example, Maarten mentioned at some point, going through really big PDFs to find something. No, it'll be much more looking at the results of your AIs, telling them, okay, this is not what I want. It should be more this or should be more that. And then working with other AIs to put it all together in a way that you get your final result that you are looking for.
Thanks, Erik. Maarten, what's your take?
Thanks, Ahmed and Erik, for making the exact 2 points that I was also going to make in order. But I have a third one. I think that we talk about productivity in RA, that's going to go up. We are convinced of that. But productivity elsewhere is also going to go up. Productivity with the competent authorities, the notified bodies, the FDA, R&D, marketing. So I think that the pace is going to increase quite a bit. Right? So now you might do one market submission and then the team will work on putting the next package together and the next one. With higher productivity, maybe you do 6 market submissions at the same time and they all come back with questions at the same time. So I expect the time slots to be smaller and the pace to be higher. That's my final prediction.
Interesting. No, I think that's really a valid point. And I think the only thing that I would add, because I don't want to echo everyone else's points, the only thing that I would add is I do think that the ones who are like super successful will have more presence, right? In that sense where they're building this experience, but they're talking about it and they're becoming thought leaders, or they're sort of like setting the example of what good looks like that others will then want to follow and learn from. And so I do think that that's something as well, because we're already seeing it. There are certain actors, there are certain players in our space that are already building that authority. And so I think that that's only going to continue forward, and that's going to bring inbound business to whoever is like focused on that space. Guys, it's been really good to have you on. Now, to all the audience, for those of you that are still with us, and I did promise we're going to finish on time, so I'm going to just share my screen for a couple of last things. In the Slido, I would like to know what your biggest learning has been from the session. So that should be coming up on your screens any second now. The poll should be running. So let us know, what did you learn from today's session? I'm looking to see what people are going to say. So, AI won't replace us. That's a good message for people to go home with. AI won't replace, but it will augment, and it might replace some that don't adapt, right? So I think it's important to make that distinction. I think people are taking their time with typing their learnings. So I'll keep the Slido open and revert back in a second. Oh, there's going to be another question coming up on your screen as well, which is, will you be attending the next session? We're going to be running another session in about a month's time. Keep an eye open for the communication. I would like to know if you're going to be attending the next session. So far, we typically get yeses. So I'm hoping, I can only see yes on my screen right now, which is telling me that we're doing the right thing. So the next session is going to be on building quiet authority. It's something that I've alluded to, and I know it's something that people are interested in. I ran a poll on LinkedIn, and one of the most popular thing that people wanted to learn was, how do you turn your expertise into influence? So this is something that we're going to be talking about in the next session. I'm going to be bringing some people that are doing it really, really well to share their learnings. I'm also going to share what I have learned doing it. So stay tuned for the information on that. And finally, I'm really excited to announce a waitlist for an AI skills accelerator that we are launching here at Elemed. So this is not a certification course, okay? This is going to be a closed cohort of like-minded individuals that want to be practical in applying AI at work. We're going to be putting people together in small groups where they can learn and share experiences and actually tangibly make some impact with implementing this into their organizations. We're going to launch it as a pilot, really small. So if you're interested, scan this QR code and please fill out the application form to join the waitlist, and we will review your application and come back to you shortly on that. But this is one to watch because we really want to be helping the community here as well and providing value. So please, if that's something that's interesting for you, do so. Last thing is, all the recordings of other future leader sessions are here. Scan this QR code on the Elemed website, or it will be in the follow-up emails. But I promised that we would finish on time, and we are. Thank you, everybody, for your valuable input. It's been really interesting talking about such an important topic and one that's super close to my heart. Nothing else but to say I wish you all a really happy day, evening, morning, whatever time of day it is for you, wherever you are in the world. This has been fantastic, and I will see you on another Future Leaders. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, audience.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.